Hello, and welcome into episode number 2 of this PHFL NFL podcast. Our week 4 review will promise to be a little bit shorter in length than we were last week. Our first podcast, I think we got a little bit excited and talked for far too long. We'll try and keep it closer to an hour and a half this week, but we can't promise anything. I'm joined again this week, as always, hopefully, by Kai. Hello, Kai.
How are we?
Not
Good
too bad.
Be back. Hopefully be a bit quicker this week.
Fingers crossed.
Babble on as much.
Exactly. And fan favourite, Mikey.
Hello, how you doing?
Not too bad. It's good to speak to you both again. I mean, I'm claiming fan favourite. I've not had anyone to say that you're not a fan favourite. So,
well, just quick update on the whole Nick Mullins being a fan of the show. He did get in touch with me saying that he wanted to be a guest on a future podcast. So, another shout out to Nick Mullins. We're going to make that a weekly thing.
Yeah, but you see, I've told him that he's getting dropped for CG Bethard. So,
yeah,
possibly,
we might bring Bethard in. But we're getting very far ahead of ourselves. That was Sunday Night Football in that game.
Yep.
But we'll quickly jump into our Week 4 review. Our first game being Thursday Night Football, where Denver travelled to the New York Jets, where I'm sure we said last week that was going to be a really boring game and none of us were going to stay up to watch it. So, of course, it ended up being a 37-28 thriller.
It's always bound to happen, isn't it? The ones you don't watch end up being exciting.
Exactly. Not so boring. And I'm sure we'll come on to it later in the show, but somehow, even after that performance, Adam Gase has not been the first coach to be sacked this year.
No.
And he insists on still giving the ball to Frank Gore, who's 2.3 yards a carry in that game, which is woeful.
But for a 63-year-old to have that many yards per carry is actually pretty impressive, isn't it?
Certainly is. On the other side of the ball, Melvin Gordon ran a bit better. I've just said welcome to the game with all those yards and those touchdowns.
Yeah, he looks as if he's decided to get his finger out just in time for Philip Lindsay coming back. Be interesting to see with the two of them back in for next week, whether he has the same kind of production rate. But yeah, it was a big win for the Broncos, I would say. I think they had to kind of pull something out the bag because they've struggled so far this season.
Yeah, they certainly have. And I'm sure I saw something online that said Greg Williams, the defensive coordinator for the New York Jets, somehow managed to concede 37 points to a Denver Broncos team that was using their third choice quarterback. They've lost one of their running backs. They don't have their first choice, their number one receiver, and you're still conceding 37 points to that offense.
Yeah, I mean, considering we thought it was going to be a probably a low-scoring, boring game, I watched the highlights. It seemed that the Broncos were putting all the pieces together from the pieces that even though they were missing a lot of pieces. So, excuse me, but Sam Darnold, I just feel bad for the guy. I do think he's a very good quarterback. You've seen it with that, 46-yard rushing touchdown when he came out of the pocket. But the question that you need to ask probably Jets fans is, are they willing to move on from Darnold if they get the number 1 pick and they bring in someone like Trevor Lawrence? I think that's going to be the big question if they realise that they're going to go into full-on tank mode.
I think they've already come out and said, or there's a rumour that come next week, Sam Darnold would start. So I don't know whether that's to give him a rest or whether it's to try and see whether Joe Flacco can maybe be a bit more productive. I have noted here that Jamison Crowder being back was a bit of a gain for the Jets. They at least had a bit more fight in them, and they looked as if they had a few more options.
Yeah, he had 100 yards.
Over 100, over 100 receiving yards. So it looks like him being back is definitely not going to turn the season around. He's not quite that kind of receiver, but at least gives them another option to play with.
Quickly on the Sam Darnold not playing point, I think he went off for a few snaps with an injury, and there's, as you say, there's talk that they might give him the time off to properly recover from it because he came back into the game, but with them still 0-4 so far in the season, maybe they will give him that extra time off.
Something needs to change.
definitely.
I think when you see as well, and I'm sure we'll get to him at some point, is Robbie Anderson doing very well for the Carolina Panthers just now. It looks like the Jets are missing someone like that. I know they're obviously missing Le'Veon Bell. I know he's got his critics, but I think if you bring those two pieces back into the offense, would they still be 0-4 potentially? But I think they'd be putting up a lot more of a fight. Anderson's a really good deep threat, and I just think they're missing a lot of pieces on offense to try and pick up any wins this season.
Yeah. Quick question before we move on. Are the Jets the worst team in the NFL?
Yes.
Yep. I agree with you. I would say so.
I don't think it takes much consideration there.
No, certainly not. Ever happy to move on then? That really boring / exciting Thursday night game
sums up that game.
Exactly. Move on to the first game on the Sunday. I keep saying Sunday afternoon, but really where we are, it's still Sunday night because we're in the west coast of Scotland. But the Baltimore Ravens travelling to the Washington football team. I'll make sure I'm saying their name right because I'm sure I said it wrong last week. Baltimore won 31 points to 17. My first point here, and Kai put it in our group chat during the game, was he was fairly excited with that 50-yard touchdown run from Lamar.
Yes, as a
are
Lamar
we allowed
Jackson.
to say the quote that he said?
Not if it has foul language in it, no.
If you can remember it, Mikey, feel free. Oh no,
I think
we can't say that.
Basically, Kai wanted to carry Lamar Jackson's babies, is what you basically said.
I wanted Lamar Jackson to carry my babies.
Oh, that's better then. That's a lot better.
Is that more acceptable? I'm not sure.
I don't think either is entirely acceptable. No, as a Lamar Jackson holder in both fantasy leagues we play in, it was very pleasant to see him run 50 yards for a touchdown.
I didn't realise you had him in Dynasty as well.
I do, yes. Yeah, I think as we probably mentioned last week and as we said throughout this week, I think the Ravens were always going to react, and I think he kind of saw that. As much as the score kind of stayed very dominant towards the Ravens, I don't think it was a no contest in the end. It never really looked in doubt for the Ravens.
Yep, I've got down here looking at the Washington side of the football that I feel Antonio Gibson's properly making that backfield his own at the moment. You know, there was a bit of Peyton Barber at the start to begin with, some McKissick in there as well. But Gibson had 13 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown. And he also in the passing game, 4 receptions, 82 yards. No touchdown there, but he had that big catch for 40 yards, which he finished that drive with a rushing touchdown. I feel as if the Brights... there's something to look forward to in Washington there. I don't think they're as bad as some people thought they might be.
No.
I think that they weren't going to light the league up this season, I don't think. But they've got a lot of good young players. I mean, they only had 69 rushing yards total, and Antonio Gibson had 46 of them. Dwayne Haskins, again, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of him, it's only second year in the league. Do I see progression? Maybe not, but you never know. Terry McLaurin at 10 receptions, 118 yards. There's pieces there for sure. It just depends. I think Ron Rivera is the right guy to lead this team for the upcoming couple of years, but I do see potential in this side.
I totally agree. And can I just say with Ron Rivera that how I find it's ridiculous that he's currently undergoing treatment for cancer, while still being there at the games on the sideline while in the middle of this COVID pandemic.
I mean, we're only 4 games into the season, and he came in the off season, and you can just tell how much the team loves him. They set up a little fan zone with all his family and friends, cardboard cutouts, even a couple of pictures of his dogs and things like that. And you don't do that for someone that you don't care deeply about. And you can tell that Ron Rivera is a good guy. He's trying to bring in a massive culture change to a franchise that desperately needs it. And honestly, I think if you'd told a lot of people beforehand or asked a lot of people who would be the right man to lead them, I think a lot of people would have said Ron Rivera.
Yeah, and fingers crossed for me, who has Antonio Gibson in, again, both forms of fantasy, that Rivera decides to use Gibson like he used CMC at the Panthers, because then Gibson will be a very high-scoring player for me.
Also, just a shout-out to Mark Andrews as well, who weirdly had a small stat line almost similar to Mike Evans. What was it, 3 receptions, 57 yards but 2 touchdowns, and
Curse.
one of his passes were for 25 yards. So a weirdly quiet game, but also a very big game for him as well. And I think he needed those touchdowns because he was poor against the Chiefs. Dropped an end zone pass, wasn't really effective in the red zone. So yeah, it's good to see him bounce back.
Curse Mark
don't-
Andrews. Week 1,
Yeah, I
he
think
scored all those touchdowns against me when I was playing you in fantasy, Mikey, and then doesn't do anything for 2 weeks, and then decides to come back with 2 touchdowns against me again this week in fantasy.
just want to say to the fans that, you know, over the last 2 weeks I have beaten both Kai and Adam in fantasy league, and I'm now 3-1. Just wanted to say that.
Can I point out to the fans that in the last 3 weeks of the fantasy season, Mikey has played the lowest scoring team in our league all 3 weeks, and every one of those 3 weeks, if he'd played anyone else, he would have lost. Your time is coming, Michael.
You make your own luck.
Well, he'll say that's the form of a champion, you see, getting that luck.
Also, just when you mentioned Mark Andrews and his pretty low stat line, like the Ravens didn't really pass the ball again. They're not really coming across as a very pass-heavy offense. It's only Lamar Jackson only had 193 passing yards. A wee cameo appearance from Robert Griffin as well, who decided to throw the longest pass ever for an interception. The only snap he played in the whole game.
It's impressive to do that and you're only snapping.
Yep, and then a wee fake punt as well for Sam. I don't know how to say that second name. I'm going to go Koch.
Yes.
Could get that very wrong, being from the
Exactly.
west coast of Scotland. So three passing players for the Ravens there, but I think Andrews is probably the target of their passing offense at the moment.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely
doesn't appear to do much.
They're definitely rush heavy, that offense. I mean you can see between them Edwards, Ingram, Dobbins, all kind of having, you know, between 5 and 9 attempts, as well as Jackson obviously running the ground. I think just if you're looking at fantasy, you don't want any of them because it's going to be touchdown dependent because they're just going to cycle between all 3 of them. They're all decent rushers, and I think that definitely when they get ahead, the Ravens are going to win a football match because they're just going to run.
Run.
Yeah. What one person who I did see the past 2 weeks, small sample size for the Ravens, is Devin Duvernay. Scored that punt return touchdown against the Chiefs.
Very
Third round
fast.
pick this year. Wasn't that active this week, but I mean, you just see the speed in him. He's a Baltimore Ravens style player. I think that depending on injuries or anything like that, we could see him in the future, and I think he's got a lot of potential.
Yep, I agree. Anything else to add in this game?
Nope, I think we've covered them.
Good. Then let's move on to the battle of the youngest quarterback starting that week and the oldest quarterback when the Chargers went to Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay came back, having been down at the start of the game, and won 38 points to 31. Did you know that this is the first time in Tom Brady's career that he's thrown 5 touchdown passes to 5 different receivers in a game?
I did not know that. That's impressive.
That's the first time ever in his whole career.
For the first half of the game, I thought it was Jameis Winston playing for the Bucs again at quarterback, just constantly throwing pick sixes, but very unlike Tom Brady. I mean, I think he threw one in his very last throw for the Patriots was a pick six against the Titans, and then I think he threw one first game of the season against the Saints. Done one again here, but it was almost I thought they were written off round about half time. I think the Chargers were maybe up 24-14 at some point, which I know isn't a massive difference, but credit to the Buccaneers. I thought they were very, very good in the second half.
It was 24-7 just before the Bucs managed to get a touchdown just before halftime.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but Tom Brady, if you want anybody on a comeback run in the second half or a comeback drive, it's probably Tom Brady.
Yeah, played. I've got down to Tom Brady plays angry post interception. I think he managed to rile himself up with interception and then goes and throws 5 touchdowns after that.
Yeah.
On the other side of the ball, I thought Justin Herbert was absolutely phenomenal again. He seems to grow in confidence week on week. I know he threw that interception, but to have the confidence he has to throw the pass, I think it was to Johnson. I think it was I think almost 55, 60 yards. He was getting closed down pretty quick. Pocket was kind of closing very quickly, and he launched the biggest pass ever for a touchdown. So, as I've said before, he's really not short of confidence, and I think that confidence just grows week on week.
How much of it is Keenan Allen? Because Keenan Allen was targeted 12 times in that game, and the next highest was Hunter Henry, and Kelly with 3.
Keenan Allen makes things look easy. Honestly, I think I would put him in that elite bracket of wide receivers. I think just because he's on I don't want to say lesser franchise or team, but I mean some of the catches he made, that the toe drag at the in one of the quarters was one of the best catches I've seen this season. I think just to go back to Justin Herbert, I mean, when you throw an interception, it usually affects your passer rating, but he was that active that he still had a passer rating of 137.9, which is incredible. Yeah, especially for a rookie quarterback. But I mean, I watched quite a lot of college ball last season, and he was brilliant at Oregon. I think he had a 72. His longest throw was 72 yards for one of the touchdowns. Those were the kind of throws he did for the Ducks in college as well, it's just amazing to see him have the confidence to do that in the NFL as well.
Can we quickly touch on Austin Ekeler?
I've just said the Chargers struggle without Ekeler.
Yeah.
I think once he went off, they looked a bit lost. Well, as you can see, Justin Herbert was the lead rusher with 14 yards.
Yeah. Jackson averaging 1.5 yards a carry. Kelly 0.8 yards per carry.
But I mean, I know obviously after the Ekeler injury, he only had 2 attempts, but Kelly had 9 attempts, I know only for 7 yards, but he's had some good games already at the start of the season, Kelly. So does he have the confidence to know that he's going to be the number 1 lead back there for the next 2-3 weeks? I just don't think the Chargers' offensive line has enough to support the rushing game unless you're Austin Ekeler.
I think this is probably where you'll see Justin Herbert being tested a bit more. He doesn't have someone like Ekeler that he can kind of dump the ball off to and let him kind of chew up a few yards. He's having to put a bit more trust in not lesser players, but probably less experienced guys. And then you might also find, like you say with Keenan Allen, you might find he targets him even more than he already was. So be interesting to see what happens with Austin Ekeler.
Yeah, just quickly looking at the other side, rushing. Ronald Jones over 100 yards, doing well there. And Mike Evans improving on his 2 catches, 2 yards, 2 touchdowns with his 7 catches for 122 in the touchdown this week.
Yeah, with having Ronald Jones in fantasy, that was rather satisfying this week. I think he's kind of been boiling under, especially week 1 and 2. I think he kind of showed that he could probably have the backfield to himself if he was kind of given it. And then obviously this week was the perfect opportunity with Leonard Fournette being out. The next, I mean, he had 20 rushing attempts, and Keyshawn Vaughn and LaShawn McCoy just miles behind them with 3 and 1, respectively. But I think when Fournette comes back, it might revert back to what it was before. It becomes a bit of a committee approach, and he's not really relevant again. But you never know.
I think some interesting news with the Bucks for their upcoming game, because they've got a short week. They play on Thursday in Chicago. OJ Howard, I think, is out for the year or out for the season.
Yeah.
Chris Godwin might not be able to play. Evans looked a little banged up. I also think Miller is also potentially injured. So they do not have a lot of receiving talent. So for the upcoming game potentially. So again, could see Ronald Jones getting the ball a lot. I mean, he had 20 attempts. Might see 25 touches, maybe even more. Maybe see more of Gronk for the first time, but that remains to be seen. But this will be a very interesting short week for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because of the amount of injuries they have in the receiving core.
I think they might be looking to try and get Keyshawn Vaughn involved a little bit more in that passing game. Because you saw the first week, I think he dropped something, and I think Brady then can avoid them for a bit. But certainly he caught that touchdown yesterday, and he had a chance to, I think, catch another one, certainly near the goal line. I think they might, especially with the lack of receivers, they might try and use him. Obviously, they had McCoy in there originally. They brought him in, and already a crowded backfield to use as a third down back, but he's not really seen as much of the play as I think people expected.
he doesn't really seem to do much there.
Yeah.
He's just a utility man.
Exactly. Anything else to add on that game? No, I've got head shakes all round. So we can move on to game 4, which was the Seattle Seahawks away to Miami. And I'm sure we'll talk about this in our prediction section later on. But the Seahawks won 31 points to 23. I've said here, not the best game for Fitzpatrick, especially with that interception early on. They had 2 interceptions in the game, no touchdowns.
No touchdowns.
But he has actually been confirmed as the starter for this coming week. There's a lot of talk that Tua might get thrown in for this coming week, but I think he's already been confirmed as a starter.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I also don't think you're going. I know they've had their injuries, but are you really going to throw Tua in against the San Francisco 49ers in California?
No.
Exactly. So that would be a very stupid decision to make. I know Brian Flores is a lot smarter than that. But there was one stat I was just looking at there, and it was just, I didn't think Chris Carson was going to start this week. I really didn't. I've got him in another league that I play in, and as soon as I seen the injury last week that we spoke about, it just looked like he was going to miss this week, 100%. And he was announced as active just before the game, and I thought, okay, they're not going to play him that much then. And I just can't believe it. He also had to go into the blue tent with a concussion at one point, and I was like, "Oh, that's him done." He came out and scored another touchdown. That this guy is just you cannot keep him off the field at the moment.
Now he's a really good running back.
I took the gamble.
Yeah, well, it paid off certainly. He's a really good running back, but certainly in fantasy, I attempt to avoid him wherever I can because I just think half the time he's not going to be on the field because he seems to be so injury prone. But it's good to see at least this season he seems to be coming back from and as opposed to being off for a couple of weeks.
Yep.
I have here a disappointing week for Russ only because he only threw 2 touchdowns instead of his normal 5 that he's been throwing so far this season. You know,
I've just got Russell Wilson is actually human. It's his second interception this year. He only threw 5 all of last season, so he's not on a very good trajectory so far. But I think obviously, like you say, we'll probably discuss this later on. It wasn't quite as much of a blowout for the Seahawks as I think people would have anticipated. I think the Dolphins managed to keep it a bit closer. Whether that was the Dolphins doing that and playing well, or whether that was just the Seahawks kind of stumbling a wee bit.
Jordan Howard increased his average yards per carry because his average was 1 yard a carry today, so that increased his average, which was 0.75 per carry before today.
2 carries for 2 yards.
No touchdown this week, so disappointed if you're a fantasy owner.
The one thing I had in fantasy was this was quite an important game for me. I had to bring in the Seahawks D because the Steelers obviously had to postpone their game, which we'll get to. But it was one of those games where I had Devontae Parker on one side of the ball, and when he went off the field, I had DK Metcalf. So both of them over 100 yards receiving. Devontae Parker, 12 targets. He had the most targets of anyone on either side of the ball. 10 receptions, 110 yards. No touchdowns though. Metcalf, only 4 receptions, but for 106 yards, just proving that he's still one of the biggest deep threats in the league. And when you're playing with the best deep ball passer in the league, you're going to get those targets, which was good to see. I love DK Metcalf. I can't say enough about him.
I don't particularly like him, especially when he's against me in fantasy and gets all those points. Anything else to mention in that game? I say it seemed to. It was a little bit closer than we thought, but basically most people expected. I'm not going to say everyone. Most people expected a Miami loss.
Yeah. And just props to Miami though. I think a lot of people, except one, thought that they were going to get rolled over in this Seattle game. But I think they made a very good account of themselves, and I mean they can go into next week again against a very tough opponent again, and maybe try and take something from that game.
I'm not quite sure what the spread was. Sorry, but I think they covered the spread, Miami. I think the spread was around 9 for that game, 9 or 10, so they covered the spread.
Just in the one. Just off the back of what we were talking about last week with Myles Gaskin and Mike Gesicki, like we'd obviously mentioned the two of them, but Mike Gesicki had 1 reception for 15 yards this week.
Same as last week, but last week's was a touchdown.
Last week's was a touchdown, and then obviously Gaskin only going for 40 yards. Ryan Fitzpatrick and his wonderful legs, as I called them last week.
Yes, wonderful legs.
with just shy of 50 yards, obviously for a touchdown. So if he's not getting it done through the air, then he seems to be running a bit more. But yeah, I think the Dolphins, like Mikey said, they give a good account of themselves this week. I don't think they'll be too disheartened by the performance.
Yep, I agree. I think we can move on to the game that probably had the biggest talking point, not necessarily on the field, but certainly after, with Minnesota travelling to Houston. Minnesota win 31 points in 23, and after the game, Bill O'Brien was fired as general manager, head coach, and play caller from the Houston Texans.
About time.
Romeo, I think his surname's pronounced Crennel, is the interim head coach, and the Texans have since announced that's for the rest of the season. I thought they might try and bring someone in, but according to their press release, they've said that he's the interim head coach for the rest of the season. So
I think it's difficult if you could bring Bill Belichick into a team that's 0-4 and they would still struggle a lot, especially without what we spoke about in the past with Hopkins. So I think it's maybe best just to chalk this season off to a loss. Who knows? Could they get a top 10 pick? I don't know. I still think they've got enough talent to win games. But yeah, I think it was a good decision to make. He's not been the best head coach. He's not a good man manager either, from a lot of things I've read and listened to in the past. So hopefully chalk this season off to a loss for the Texans and then usher in a new era next year.
To answer your question regarding a top 10 pick, no, they can't get a top 10 pick because they've traded the first and second rounder to Miami for Larry Tunsil at left tackle. Yeah. So even if they do tank, they don't get that pick.
Maybe a new era in 2 years' time.
Exactly. I've got noted down here that actually as head coach, because he's taken on the general manager, the GM hat recently, but as head coach, pre-Watson, now bear in mind, they didn't really have a very good quarterback during then. At one point they had Brock Osweiler, didn't they? Pre-Watson, he had 3 9-7 seasons, which is no bad for a team that really didn't have a quarterback. And since they've had Watson, there's been 2 10+ win seasons. But really, I've got here that his GM hat kind of killed him, and especially I think that trade. I think
that was that
trade Hopkins for David Johnson, and then obviously trading all those first and second round. It's not just the first round; it's the first and second round pick for next year. They traded to get Larry Tunsil.
Yeah, when you do that as well, especially when those two things happen, and the thing that happened before it was that playoff loss to the Chiefs when they were up. The Chiefs when they were up 24-0. Like it was. I know the Chiefs are a phenomenal team, but it really should have been the Texans in that AFC Championship game when they go out to a lead like that, especially when you've got people like JJ Watt on the ball there. So yeah, it's been a very crazy 6 months for the Texans, but yeah, as we said, it's time to start something new.
Moving on to on you go, Kate.
Yes, I was going to say probably the same thing as you. I think we've got to give a bit of credit to the Vikings here as well. Having been 0-3 going into this game, it was the battle of the bad as such, 0-3. But I don't think the Vikings have been that bad so far this season.
No, and I was just going to say, Dalvin Cook, 27 rushing attempts.
Yeah, I was going to say running backs win the day for Vikings, but actually, when you look, he scored the 2 touchdowns. Alexander Mattison scores a third. But Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson both went for over 100 yards. Adam Thielen obviously with a touchdown as well. Justin Jefferson appears to have done that in half the number of receptions as Thielen did.
He's averaging 25.8 yards a catch.
Yeah.
But I've just
pretty bad.
Looking at the receiving game, as you say, Thielen and Jefferson catch 12 balls between them, and there's only 4 catches the rest of the team. So basically, and Cousins is looking at those 2 receivers and just throwing at them.
Two of those other 4 catches are from Dalvin Cook, who's already doing most of the work running.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think Deshaun Watson tried. He really did try, but it just every time it looked as if he was maybe starting to get a momentum going or something, he would just kind of stumble a bit. I think he's struggling with not having, like we said last week, he's really struggling with not having someone other than Will Fuller really to throw the ball to.
One thing that surprised me a lot in the stat lines this week is that Deshaun Watson only had 9 rushing yards Myself and Kai and our friend Sean as well, who's in the league, we went to Wembley last season to see the Texans Jags game, and I'd thought it for a long time, but I just think that confirmed it when we were at Wembley, is that Deshaun Watson is the best scrambler in the NFL. He's so good at breaking out the pocket, making plays, breaking the sack, avoiding the tackle, things like that. And to only have 9 yards against the Vikings D, who isn't what it used to be. I think we've spoke about that in the past. Surprising to see that. I just think, they're at a complete loss for once just now. Trying to see who they have next week. Playing the Jags next week,
Jags,
actually, in the divisional game. At home, potentially a chance for a win there, but again, with everything just up in the air, it's a hard one to predict.
Well, I'm quickly going to move on from this because we have a little game that we're playing later on, and the Houston Texans may or may not be part of that game. So I'm sure we can talk about them a little bit later on in more detail if we have to. But basically, just covering that big story that Bill O'Brien's the first coach to go. I'm sure not many people would have put money on that. I'm sure Mikey last week was talking about Dan Quinn and Adam Gase as the two that he'd like to see. Well, maybe not like to see, but certainly suggest would.
No, that I don't have many notes this week, but at the very top of my sheet, it's block capitals in bold and underlined: Adam Gase and Dan Quinn out. I will continue to hammer that home until they're gone.
I actually
on you go. It's just sprung to mind that I meant to talk about it earlier. I don't know if either of you saw the video of the end of the Broncos Jets game, but basically there was a number of pretty physical fouls and penalties on the Jets towards the end of the game, and the Broncos head coach, whose name has totally slipped my mind,
Vic
Fangio.
Vic Fangio, there we go. Basically ran onto the field with a number of explicitives at the end of the game, and pulled his full team off the field without, engaging with the Jets. Wouldn't shake hands, told them to go straight up the tunnel and into the locker room. So I don't think he was too impressed with the way the Jets were playing.
You see, I think some people, I'd heard that had happened as well, but some people had attempted to spin it that the reason they were doing that was for not mingling with the other team too long in terms of COVID. And I was like, having watched it, I was like, I'm not sure he's just doing that so that they don't catch COVID off this other team.
He's quite aggressive in the way he says it and the way he does it. I don't think he's doing that to keep his team safe from COVID.
No, I would agree with you. But
anyway,
yes, I had a little comment of somebody saying that they were a bit, upset's the wrong word, but with our slating of the New York-based teams because they were a fan of the New York teams, and my response to them was, "Well, see when those New York teams actually are good, then we'll stop slating them." So Adam Gase out. There we go. That's especially for you.
Shout out to whoever that was.
It was actually my younger brother.
Oh. You're allowed to slate them then.
Exactly. We'll move on to the next game, which was the New Orleans Saints travelling to the Detroit Lions. 35-29, New Orleans Saints won that game. And here is my stat of the day. And normally I have one for each game. Detroit were leading 14-0. Okay?
Yep.
And this is the 6th straight time that they have been that they've taken a double-digit lead and lost the game. Now, it's not 6 straight games they've went to a double-digit lead, but in the last 6 games that they have taken a double-digit lead, they have lost that game. And that's is stretching back to Thanksgiving last year. And that is an NFL all-time record. Like the 100 years of the NFL, no other team has managed to go 6 straight double-digit leads blown. Now, obviously, they won last week against the Cardinals, but they were never ahead by double digits.
I don't think that's not the kind of NFL record that you want to have against your name, is it?
No.
Like, people probably dream about having NFL records, but I don't think that's the kind of one you want.
We say that the Falcons bottle all the leads, but clearly it's the Lions that are doing this.
I think it comes down to, like you say, obviously they went 14-0 up very, very quickly. They were still 14-7 up going into the second quarter, and then I think it's just come down to an absolute blowout from the Saints in the second quarter, which I think they ended up winning 21-0 in the second quarter to get themselves up 28-14 going in at halftime. With the Lions, like you say, just seemed to fall apart a wee bit.
They actually had 35 uninterrupted points.
Yeah, madness.
I think that this game to me came down to one play, which was a Matthew Stafford interception, maybe within the 10-yard line. When you look at the scoreline at the end, I know the Saints put up 34 unanswered points or 35 unanswered points, but it could have been a different game if they'd scored from that that touchdown at that point. Again, similar to the Dolphins, for long stretches in this game, I don't think the Lions were bad. I think Matthew Stafford is a very, very good quarterback. But yeah, I think this just came down to roster depth and Drew Brees really coming along. I think he had a really, really good game this week.
As soon as I drop him off my fantasy team, there you go. He ends up having a good week. But I've definitely, in regards to that, I've got the Detroit defense just couldn't get off the field. 83% third down conversion for New Orleans Saints, and they also had a fourth down Alvin Kamara 29-yard reception at one point. And you're like, on fourth down you can't be giving up 29 yards. You know, and they just couldn't get off the field. Right at the start of the game, I say in our wee group chat, I had a lovely message off of Kai having me ask the question if Swift was being punished for his work week one. What did he do? Oh, go and get that the receiving touchdown right at the start.
I said, I've got that written down, like DeAndre Swift, confidence builder by the looks of it. He's barely seen the ball once since he dropped it. So like Adam says, what do you do? Give him the ball in the first reception of the game and he catches it for a touchdown. He didn't do much after that, to be fair.
No, I'm just looking at the stat line.
he only had 3 other receptions for 30 yards and 4 rushes for 22 yards, so he wasn't exactly very active. But I definitely think it'll help him grow in confidence a wee bit. On the other side of the ball, I think confidence builder. Obviously, we know Michael Thomas, Tre'Quan Smith. My God, can I speak? Tre'Quan Smith, as much as he only had 4 receptions, he was averaging 14 yards a reception and got 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I was impressed with that.
I think he had a good showing. I think it shows that Drew Brees trusts more than just Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, obviously with Emmanuel Sanders and Smith kind of getting a wee bit of work. But Latavius Murray also impressed me in the sense that it must be hard being Latavius Murray and being like second string to someone like Alvin Kamara, who just always seems to play well. But then Latavius Murray comes away with 64 yards and 2 touchdowns this week, kind of outshone Kamara a wee bit.
Yeah, I know that Latavius Murray's not going to be too upset about that. I mean, we've seen it when the Saints love to run kind of 2 running back sets in games. We've seen it with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara at the time, where Ingram was that almost Derrick Henry style player and Alvin Kamara was the elusive back. I think Latavius Murray could easily be a running back 1 on many teams in the NFL. But I honestly think he enjoys his role, is what he does. I think with the way that Saints offense is coached, Latavius Murray, they get the best out of him in that team.
I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for it, though. Like you say, I think he does. Kamara does the pretty work and seems to juke in and out of people very easily, but Latavius Murray, like you say, does the hard work, batters folk out of the way.
And as has happened in previous seasons, if Kamara goes down injured, then Latavius Murray for fantasy is almost certainly a running back 1. He with that quality, with that offense, but his quality obviously as well, as you're saying, Mikey, that he'll easily be a running back 1 for fantasy if Kamara goes down, which we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else for that game?
Just to highlight the fact that the Lions fell to 1-3 this week, which was rather surprising. But
as Packers fans, I'm sure
not
me and Mikey are
surprising
perfectly happy
at
with
all.
Right, next game then. I think many people would suggest this was the game of the week.
Oh my gosh!
Cleveland at Dallas, 49 points to 30. I think it might have just covered the over. in terms of points. I'm not quite sure. I don't know if maybe the over was 75 points or something like that. But my interesting fact of this game: did you know that the last two teams to score 49 points or more against the Cowboys have went on to play in the Super Bowl? The Eagles in 2004 and the Broncos in 2013.
Interesting.
Wow.
I think this is the year to buck the trend.
I was going to say, are the Browns getting to the Super Bowl? It would appear
I'm saying
not.
it now, outright. Clip it if you want.
So that's a no to the Browns getting to the Super Bowl then, is it?
Absolutely no way.
Odell Beckham. Someone want to talk about him?
Clearly he was listening last week when we were slating him and asking when the hell he would come back. I think you saw why he's so exciting as a receiver.
And a rusher, don't forget that.
I was going to say, and also the fact that he pulled off one of the best plays the whole game by turning himself into Nick Chubb for 10 minutes while he was off the park. Yeah, he was good. He was very, very, very good this week. And I think probably the elephant in the room is that ridiculous play where Jarvis Landry decided to take over from take over from Baker Mayfield for one play and throw a left-handed touchdown.
I was going to mention that because I wasn't actually watching the games at that point, but I saw the notifications on our wee group chat coming through, and it was just, OBJ, Landry. Wait, what? I thought it was OBJ. Oh no, wait, Landry threw it. Oh wait, did he? All right.
It was Mikey went, oh my god, Landry, and I went, nah, OBJ caught it because I just thought it was a normal touchdown, and then I watched the replay and noticed that it was Landry that threw it. Yeah, it was everything about this game was exciting. Dak Prescott over 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he still lost.
I can't believe that. I'm sure I said this about him last week, was it not? He had over 400 passing yards and lost the game.
Yeah.
He's on track to have a new record of passing yards in a season.
It's just bizarre looking at the stat line here. Just first quarter, Cowboys won it 14-7, and then in the final quarter, Cowboys won it 24-8. But in quarter 2 and 3, Browns won 24-0 and 10-0 in quarters 2 and 3, which is just I don't understand how a Cowboys offense that has Dak, Zeke, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup is putting up 0 points over what it just doesn't make sense to me. One thing I've noticed over the past couple of weeks with the Cowboys is how much they're fumbling the ball.
Yeah.
Whether it's Dak or Zeke or anybody else, that they seem to be fumbling the ball an awful lot. I've got them to win their division. They're 1-3 just now, but it looks like you could have a losing record and win that division and make the playoffs.
I was going to say 6 wins wins that division, is it?
Yeah.
I think you find the mighty Philadelphia Eagles will win that division.
Don't worry, we'll get on to them. But personally though, Mikey, I agree with you. I think a losing record will win this division. At the start of the season, I thought it was going to be a tough contest between the Cowboys and the Eagles, but so far both of them. I mean, I can't really say the Cowboys haven't impressed. Offensively, they're amazing. Just their defense is non-existent.
I've got it down here. They're in the top 3 overall point scorers in the NFL at the moment, and they're a 1-3 record. Like, I think the only 2 teams to have scored more than them at the moment, bizarrely, are I want to say the Packers and potentially I actually think the Cleveland Browns might be in the top 3 of point scorers now.
I'm not sure they can be. They only get 6 points week 1. Do they not against Baltimore?
I'm gonna double check this at the moment.
While we do that, though, I'll talk about this rushing game, and I don't often voice my opinions on things. I'll leave that to the two of you, but I'll voice my opinion. Obviously, we've got the Nick Chubb injury. So that kind of 2-headed monster that was there has lost one of its heads in Chubb.
Yep.
But Kareem Hunt, I think, stepped up to the plate very well there, and also the boy Johnson, who not many folk were talking about, stepped in very well. 95 yards on his 13 attempts, and they had 307 rushing yards, and that was including.
Madness.
I mean, Nick Chubb, their lead running back, was injured in the game, and they still get 307 rushing yards. So we said at the start of the season, like the last podcast, I suppose, that Stefanski coming over from the Vikings, we saw he likes to rush the ball, and that's exactly what he's doing here. 307 yards and 40. I mean, I can't believe that 7.5 yards an attempt. That was obviously helped by the fact that Odell Beckham rushed twice for 73 yards. But but definitely, I think Hunt and Johnson will be able to take that load that Chubb would normally have taken before that injury.
I take back my comment about the Browns. They're actually the fourth highest scorer in the division. It's the Seahawks that are up in the top three with the Cowboys. And
that doesn't surprise me with all those touchdowns from Russell.
Yes.
Yeah, just one thing I was just looking at there. I was just trying to make sure this was all the right stuff. Cody Parkey is now the Cleveland Browns kicker, I want to say. Let me just... Yep, so he's the Cleveland Browns kicker just now. He has a 100% record this season from field goals and extra points. And if you remember right, Cody Parkey is the same kicker that had the double doink in the Chicago Bears playoff game against the Eagles and got released that season. So I think I know a lot of kickers bounce around teams, but considering such a terrible thing happened to him in the playoffs, to be 100% on a high-scoring offense as a kicker, props to him as well.
And
on the subject of field goals, the Cowboys did not kick a single field goal this whole game.
was it all touchdowns, punts, or turnovers?
It was all touchdowns, punts, or like Mikey had said, turnovers on fumbles. I think they had two fumbles, and the Browns recovered both of them.
I feel as if we've not really said a huge amount about the game, but it was just a really fun game to watch, and
it was great.
I thought if every NFL game was like that, then there'd be a lot of defensive coordinators getting sacked. But it was fun to watch, certainly as a spectacle. Don't get me wrong, sometimes I can enjoy a defensive battle, but sometimes you just want to see teams fling the ball up the field, and that's exactly what happened there.
There was one game 2 years ago, I think.
Monday Night Football?
It was Chiefs versus Rams. I think both teams scored over 50 points.
Yeah.
And there was a stat that was, I think the Rams ended up winning that game. That was the year they went to the Super Bowl. And there was a stat that if a team scores 50 plus points in an NFL game, I think combined record, they were 165-0 or something like that. And the Chiefs put up 50 points that game and lost to the Rams. It was the first ever loss to a team that scored 50 points. But the fact that there was over 100 points in an NFL game, it was just mad.
Madness.
Great to see sometimes.
Before we move on from this game, quick shout out to the Browns punter, who I really like his nickname, being the Scottish Hammer, that he decides to nickname himself, the boy Gillen. And he actually does have quite a good... Like, I know we don't often want to talk about punters because it's not very interesting, but for what I've seen of him, he seems to punt fairly well. So
we'll try to get him on the show at some point.
I mean, realistically, we should.
Having Nick Mullins.
CJ Beathard now. Come on, we're not having Mullins. He's been dropped. Right, so move on from the game of the week to, as we said, the one that wasn't the game. I mean, there wasn't anything wrong with this game. Jacksonville travelling to Cincinnati. Cincinnati winning 33-25. And my first note here is, hello, Joe Mixon. Welcome
the Joe
in.
Show.
Exactly. Bear in mind he was in a hospital bed in the Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
With a chest injury. 25 attempts, 151 yards and 2 touchdowns, 6 catches for 30 yards through the air. Welcome to the Joe Mixon Show.
Touchdown.
It says something when you're the lead rushing player on your team and you're also the second highest receiving player. Like, he had a big game. Thank God for that, because I also have him in fantasy. And through weeks 1 to 3, it'd been slightly disappointing, to say the least. I think he was one of the only running backs in the top 5 that hadn't scored a touchdown yet. So what does he do? He goes and scores 3.
All in the 1 week, why not?
Yeah. I would also like to thank Joe Mixon a lot, because I was playing Adam this week and Adam brought in Joe Burrow, who didn't have a bad game in terms of NFL wise, but in terms of fantasy, just a 1 touchdown and 1 interception. And Joe Mixon, I think, stole all the points away from the Cincinnati offense that week. So thank you to him.
I had a crying face.
Yeah, I think on the topic of Joe Burrow as well, I think he probably he played to the limited crowd that there was. I think we'd mentioned last week it would be interesting to see how he reacted to having somewhat of a crowd. in the stadium if things start to turn. But he played well. I think the Bengals needed that win finally. Not much to say about the Jags, to be honest.
Can I just say that they're really bad?
They're not the most exciting team.
At the start of the season, some people were predicting them for a few wins, especially after the first week when they played not bad. And the whole time I don't think they're that good. I know everyone seems to, especially after last year, rave about Minshew, but personally, I don't think he's that great. They've Chark and Chenault seem to be quite good in the receiving game, and Robinson's obviously come into the running game. But personally, I don't think I'd ever pick them to win a game.
I'd just like to say that we are not burning all bridges with Gardner Minshew on this podcast. We'd love to have you on at some point. Maybe we'll get Adam to take a day off when.
I'd happily have him on the podcast. I just don't think he's particularly good.
One breakout player, I think. When I was watching the draft this year, I was following the Bengals immensely during the draft because obviously you know they had the number one pick and picked Joe Burrow, but when you think that they have the number one pick in every single round, you don't win Super Bowls with first and second and third round picks. It's a lot of late round picks that can really win you Super Bowls. And I know he was the first pick in the second round, but T. Higgins has been nothing short of amazing for this Bengals offense this season. Only 4 receptions this game, but for 77 yards. But again, I watch a lot of college football, and at Clemson, especially when they won the national title 2 years ago, a very, very good wide receiver. And I think that Joe Burrow and T. Higgins are going to form a really good partnership together.
AJ Green done? ?
Was he injured?
I mean, he had 5 targets. He only caught one of them for 3 yards.
Yeah,
I know.
Is that a case of him not being capable, not being fully fit to catch or be on the field all the time, or is it just a case of Joe Burrow absolutely loving Tyler Boyd?
Personally, I don't think. Obviously, at the start, Burrow seemed to be targeting Green a lot, but I think defenses are still taking Green as the number one receiver, so they're putting their best cornerback on him, and that's obviously making it hard for Burrow to throw to him because he's being covered by the best corner. But also, I think because of that, Burrow's getting a relationship with Boyd and Higgins as well, and I think this obviously Green franchise tag for this year, isn't he? So I don't personally, I don't think they'll keep him beyond this year.
No.
I think, and then I don't know where he's going to go after that either because he's not really shown anything to kind of attract a team. I know he's still got the quality because him and Julio Jones came out called at the same time and they're these 2 great receivers, but I'm not sure, to be honest. I that's why I had question mark. I'm not definitely saying Green's done, but obviously
it doesn't look promising for him at the Bengals. Put it that way. He was on the field for 71% of the game. I just checked there, so he was on the field for the same amount of time as Tyler Boyd and more time than T. Higgins. It doesn't seem to be in favour.
Yeah, I mean, and all, for fantasy, Green's not had a good season for about 3 years because he was injured most of the past 2. So I don't want to say AJ Green's done, but when you see how well Julio's playing, maybe not this week, but so most of the season compared to how Green's playing, perhaps he is. Can we move on to the next game?
I'd rather we didn't because it pains me to talk about them.
Well,
if it's who I think it is.
Well, I'm going down the order that was on the NFL website. So the next one for me is the Cardinals away to the Panthers.
Oh, we can talk about that.
Are you happy to talk about that? That's fine.
We can talk about that.
The Panthers won 31-21. I'm going to see if I can find a celebration thing here for when we come to the prediction segment later on, because I'm sure I picked the Panthers for this game, and I was right. They won by 10 points.
Both picked the Panthers.
I also picked the Panthers this week.
I'll tell you, the only reason I picked the Cardinals is probably just biased because I have Kyler Murray and Kenyon Drake in my fantasy team. So I like to think if they go off, which I hope they do, they're going to win games. But just a quick reminder to anybody in the league, Kenyon Drake is available for trade.
Well, talking about that, I've got Cardinals running game is poor. Because so far this season it has been. A lot of people, obviously, like you, Mikey, drafted Kenyon Drake fairly high in fantasy drafts, and that certainly hasn't paid off so far.
Third round, I think I got him. Yeah, that just, I know we're not going to touch upon the previews for next week too much, but they play the Jets next week, and you've got to think if Kenyon Drake doesn't have a big game, and this is purely in terms of fantasy, if Kenyon Drake doesn't have a big game there, then I think a lot of fantasy owners might look to ship him off in a deal that probably wouldn't get you in the same stock as the fact that he was maybe a second or third round pick for most people.
I was going to say they play the Jets next week, so put Chase Edmonds in your fantasy team because Drake's not doing anything. So
Yep.
I think Kyler. God,
yes,
talking weird. Kyler Murray was relatively quiet as well. I know he got 3 touchdowns. I think that kind of masks the fact that he only threw for 133 yards. Kind of spread his targets across 3 or 4 folk, but he was very quiet.
24 pass completions and it's only 133 yards. That's
he
5
seemed
yards
to
a
be
pass.
dumping the ball off quite close to him. Obviously, probably scared off the back of last week. He threw a couple of interceptions. He's probably a wee bit more reserved this week off the back of that. But I think the Panthers just got out the blocks pretty quickly. I think they got themselves up to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter, and then 21-7 up by half time. And the Cardinals just never really recovered.
And unlike the Lions, Panthers appear to hold on to a lead.
Yeah, they are able to do that.
I've got here on the Panther side of the ball that Teddy, as he has been most of the season, has been solid. Teddy Bridgewater, maybe nothing special, but he's perfectly solid for you at QB. He's not going to do a lot wrong. And Mike Davis has been doing well again, and it's still that question's there over whether CMC is going to take all the work back when he comes in, or whether they're going to split it between the two of them.
Yeah, they don't appear to be. Obviously, you will obviously miss him in some aspects, but they don't appear to be missing Christian McCaffrey too much on the whole. Like
they're
you say,
2-0 without him.
Yeah,
I know, and 2 with them.
Mike Davis has come in and he's obviously not the same running back as Christian McCaffrey is, but he's certainly lived up to expectations and what they probably wanted from him. But I've just got down. It wasn't a very exciting game on the whole.
No, though there was a lot of points scored.
Yeah, a lot of points scored, but it was very run of the mill.
I think the fact that they're 2-0 without McCaffrey has everything to do with McCaffrey, because when you have one of the best players in the league for a position in your team, teams are going to double team him and try and do everything to stop him. So when you don't have that player in your team, where do you focus your attention to? You don't know. Do we focus it on Mike Davis? Oh, well, now we're going to throw it deep to Robbie Anderson, and vice versa. So this is, for example, offensive lines are trying to double team Aaron Donald because he's so dominant. If you don't have Aaron Donald, where do you turn your attention to? Do you know what I mean? And that means the Rams might actually benefit from it more. So I think in a way that has affected them, because D's don't know where to turn their attention to on this offense. And Teddy Bridgewater had an 18-yard run touchdown himself, which was a great run. I actually think that the offense looks quite good in Carolina. Robbie Anderson, again, he only had 99 yards this week, but I mean, he's had a few 100-yard receiving games. I think he's been a great addition, and I actually do like the look of the Panthers this season. I had the Cardinals to win this game, but in saying that, I'm not surprised that the Panthers won.
Yep, I agree. I like the look of the Panthers. They were the team in the draft that took 7 defensive picks, weren't they, in the draft? And the offense, They didn't draft anyone. A lot of people were like, but maybe it's worked because the offense has kind of stayed fairly together. I know you've obviously brought in Anderson and Davis there, but basically most of the people who were playing in the offense last year, which was fairly good, are there again, and they're just improving that defense, which was fairly poor last year.
And then
they've obviously got DJ Moore kind of coming into a bit of a game. Curtis Samuel's there as well. Curtis Samuel seems to be appearing on both sides of the ball. Maybe not so much this week. His 2 rushing attempts for -3 yards would say otherwise.
I think I could do better than that.
But I think weeks gone by, in the first 3 weeks, he looked as if they were kind of utilising him as a dual threat a wee bit. So yeah, I think it's probably promising signs for them. They look as if they've got they've not got a ridiculously good team, but they have a good solid unit. They've got quite a good roster of players, and I think with CMC to come back, don't think that's a bad thing in any situation.
This roster kind of strikes me as an 8-8 sort of roster at
Yeah.
the moment.
I think to flip what I said about the fact that they're benefiting from CMC not being there, I think in saying that when he does come back, now their teams are going to think, do we turn our attention to CMC, or do we turn the fact that they've got loads of other targets, and that could benefit them massively if they keep turning their attention to CMC. Mike Davis, Robbie Anderson, people like that are going to probably ball out, and then the same in saying that if they turn their attention to those guys, CMC is going to be able to cut through. So it'll be. I think that's a team very much so to keep your eye on. They're not going to win pretty, but I think that they might surprise a few this season.
Yep, I agree. So I think that was the last of the early slate of games.
Mm-hmm.
And the next game we were going to talk about was the New York Giants traveling to Los Angeles Rams.
This was the one I was talking about.
17-9, the Rams won. I'll just quickly have this sentence. Not a great game, seeing as this was one of the ones I ended up watching. Not a great game, and the Rams tried their best to lose it. Would you say?
Yeah. I've got the Rams stumble to a very, very mediocre victory. Jared Goff is, and then some
expletives.
Inappropriate words. In other words, Jared Goff is absolutely rubbish.
Personally, I don't have much to say about this, and I actually had a little game planned. But if you have anything to say about it, feel free to say. But I was more interested in playing a game regarding this game.
Well, yeah, the funny thing is, when we spoke about a few teams last week, like the Bears could have been 0-3, and the Vikings could have been 3-0. This is going to sound weird because I'm so against the Giants, but they could be 2-2. Like they get comfortably beat by the Steelers in week 1. In week 2 against the Bears, they were down by 4 with the ball in Daniel Jones' hands for the last play of the game. Soundly beat by the 49ers. Then again, this week, I mean, they had the ball on the last drive of the game, could have scored a touchdown with a 2-point conversion to take it to overtime, which, yes, they might not win. But I think me and Kai spoke about it. Daniel Jones was in the pocket and he started to run, and he was 3 or 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and he decided to throw the ball when he maybe had 20 yards of space in front of him to run.
Yeah.
And did he throw a pick in that play? I'm not sure how it worked.
I threw an interception on that play with, I think there was a couple of minutes in the clock, and I think the Rams just got the ball back.
A more experienced quarterback, and also a quarterback that isn't 0-3 would perhaps do better in that situation. But I've got a stat here about the Giants. 21 players have more touchdowns than the entire Giants team combined.
Well, Mikey, that's what this game's going to be, okay? Because I have that exact same thing, okay? So the Giants offense has got 3...
Okay, I won't look at it anymore.
Right, has got 3 total touchdowns in their 4 games, okay?
Uh-huh.
That's 3 total touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey has played 2 games. How many rushing touchdowns does he have? Higher or lower than 3?
Ooh.
He's played 2 games, bear in mind, because he's been injured for 2 of them. Okay?
Higher.
Mikey's going higher.
I'm going lower.
CMC has got 4 rushing touchdowns in these 2 games. He's got more rushing touchdowns than the whole of the Giants offense of any touchdowns. And player number 2 for this game, okay? Cam Newton, passing touchdowns. Higher or lower than 3? Lower. He's only got 2. 2 passing touchdowns. But yes, basically I couldn't find anything passing. Sorry. They only I couldn't find anything to talk about this game, so I just decided to make a wee game because it wasn't that interesting.
I've got down that for the second week running, the Giants haven't scored a touchdown again. Obviously, you beat me to it with the fact that they're not really scoring touchdowns at all. But yeah, not a very exciting game at all. The Rams didn't look very
good,
exciting either.
I'm just going to run through this list of players. Some of them you would expect, but I mean, we've got quarterbacks in here that have scored more touchdowns, and not in terms of throwing. I'm talking like Kyler Murray, but Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Cook, Mike Evans, Robert Tonyan, who we'll get to, Kareem Hunt, Chris Carson, OBJ, Jerick McKinnon, Melvin Gordon, Mark Andrews, Tyreek Hill, to name a few. Like, it's just times are tough in New York, no matter what team you support.
Yep. So sorry, Matthew.
New York teams again.
Yep.
Adam's brother's going to be racist.
Yep. Sorry, Matt. We're slagging them off again.
One thing, the actual, funnily enough, the main talking point to come out of this game was, I don't know if any of you has read about it, was the Jalen Ramsey Golden Tate beef.
Yeah, there was a wee bit before it as well.
So Jalen Ramsey got Golden Tate's sister pregnant, I believe, and walked out on her. So obviously there's going to be a bit of bad blood between them, and I don't know if any of you have seen the tackle that Jalen Ramsey hit on Golden Tate. It was amazing. He drove him into the turf. But apparently after the game, Jalen Ramsey was waiting outside the Giants' locker room for Golden Tate, and I believe, don't quote me on this, anybody that's watching, but I believe that a few punches were thrown. I don't know if anything's came of it, but I believe there was a bit of a scuffle after the game between those two players. So probably if they put the cameras in the changing rooms after the game, you probably would have got more excitement from this game.
I mean, I don't know if I want to be looking in those changing rooms on the cameras. I don't know if there's I don't know if I want to be looking in the changing room and with those cameras.
Just for that one incident, yeah.
I think we can move on for that game because it was, I say, fairly boring. The Rams managed to scrape that victory. The next game in that time was Buffalo Bills traveling to Las Vegas. 30 points to 23. Buffalo won. And my first point is on actually the Raiders side of the ball. Waller back on form with his 9 catches for 88 yards. I know he didn't get a touchdown, but seeing he was very quiet last week. But Derek Carr's main target appears to be back.
Darren Waller.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this was actually quite a good game. The Raiders didn't really make it hard for the Bills at times. Derek Carr managed to get things going and then drop the ball or do something stupid. I think the game was, I'm not saying it was won on these plays, but I think it certainly turned the tide or decided it was the fourth quarter. I think the Bills had 2 massive plays on defense where they sacked Derek Carr for quite a big loss on one of them and then managed to strip sack him for the other one to get the ball back just when the Raiders were kind of advancing upfield. Obviously, you've mentioned that Darren Waller seems to be Derek Carr's big target. The Raiders had 6 players all over 20 receiving yards, but none of them really, apart from Darren Waller, big. The rest of them were all very mediocre, like a couple of catches and then nothing. And the only touchdown. Oh, sorry, no. Jason Witten got a touchdown as well. Good. That's a
blast for the pass, exactly.
Yeah. I don't really know what to think of the Raiders. I know they came out 2-0, but I think they're now back at 2-2. I think that's probably a more reflective record based on their performances so far.
Do you have anything to mention, Mikey, on the Las Vegas side, or do you want to talk about Buffalo?
Yeah, no, just one thing. I've never been a big fan of Derek Carr. I also thought in Hard Knocks at the start of last season, I felt like he was very much playing to the cameras when he was on the show, and I just didn't like it. But I have to think, I do think Derek Carr is a very good quarterback. I just don't think he's in the right system to show what he's got. John Gruden, doesn't like to be a pass-heavy offense. He's very run-heavy.
Very old school.
Yep, very, very old school. But these kind of games show you, again, small sample size, what Derek Carr can do. He can sling it downfield if he wants to. And the fact that he did it without maybe Ruggs, who's probably going to be, and
Edwards,
Tyrell Williams as well. Oh. I just think that a fully fit offense around Derek Carr could be dangerous. Do I think they're going to lose next week against the Chiefs? Yes, but again, similar team to the Panthers. If things are done right, I think they could surprise a few again. I know there's no crowds in the stadiums this season, but maybe next season you've got a brand new stadium in Vegas. You get a fresh start. I think they'll be an interesting team to follow over the next couple of years.
Yep.
Just obviously, you mentioned Derek Carr and how much you thought he was playing to cameras. I was going to ask you, could Derek Carr potentially be the nicest quarterback in the league?
No.
I don't
No.
know if you've seen the video of every time he gets hit, he's like, "Nice hit, guys. Yeah, smashing."
I've not
Like
seen that video.
he seems to thank like big defensive linemen absolutely nailing him, and he's like congratulating them on the hit and saying thanks and all that. Like
He's just trying to copy Andrew Luck because Andrew Luck is the nicest quarterback in the league, or was the
there you go.
nicest quarterback in the league.
That answers the question then. No.
Jumping to the other side of the ball then. Devin Singletary had a fairly good showing again, being the only running back out there. I say it's not the only running back, but the main running back there for Buffalo. Josh Allen didn't rush as much. In fact, hardly at all. But Stephen Diggs, he's really making a big difference. I think we're seeing that definitely through the first 4 games to that passing offense in Buffalo.
It's hard to think that when a team brings in one player in the offseason, I know they've obviously drafted players, but when you bring in a big name like Diggs, you don't fully expect them to completely change everything. It takes a lot more than one player to change an offense, but I honestly believe Diggs has been one of the best acquisitions in the offseason. I just think he's given confidence to Josh Allen. He's given confidence to the whole receiving core. He's taken the heat away from a lot of other players. DBs are concentrating on him, which is allowing other players to shine. Run game's good. Yeah, I don't know. I think one of you said that the Bills might make the Super Bowl this season, and I really wouldn't be surprised if they did. I think they look legit this year.
I think Stefan Diggs gives them a massive threat downfield, so it kind of opens the game up a wee bit for the rest of the offense, like you said, including Cole Beasley. Who, talking of Cole Beasley, do you think he's all right? But after that catch, I think he died in midair, as Mikey said, with a hit, and then as he came to the ground and slammed his full body and head into the turf, I
think it's one of those
back into consciousness.
When you hurt yourself in front of a large group of people, you get up and that fine. But as soon as he sat down on the bench, he was probably like, "I need medical attention pronto."
Oh my god!
I think I'll be glad he had a helmet on. He could cry underneath it, no many folk will be able to see.
Yeah.
I mean, fair play to him for holding onto the ball and.
I mean, he gets paid enough.
In for a touchdown.
If I was getting paid that amount of money, I'd be holding on to it.
Player.
Yeah, I think he is hugely underrated. Obviously, he did well at the Cowboys. They kind of tried to replace him with Randall Cobb now, but I think Beasley's he's that sort of safety blanket as well, because he's normally centre of the field, 5-10 yards downfield. He does a good job with what he's doing. Anything else to mention about this game?
All good.
Good, in which case we can move on to the really, really, really exciting game that was the Indianapolis Colts at the Chicago Bears. And Nick Foles taking on that offense, his first start, let's go Bears. No, it didn't really work like that. Up until that last drive, really, they had 3 points the whole game. The Colts won 19-11. I'm just going to quickly touch on the Colts side of the ball before we talk about Foles in Chicago. And all I've got noted down is give the ball to Taylor. When you look at the rushing stats, with Jordan Wilkins and Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor, Taylor's a better runner. You'll see it in the game. If you just give him the ball, he'll run and he'll get yards.
You can give Jonathan Taylor the ball from this week onwards until the end of time, because I was against Adam, who has him this week, and glad that he had a relatively quiet showing as far as fantasy is concerned. I was delighted to see that, because I was worried about him.
Jonathan Taylor's just so much better than those other running backs there. And I know, obviously, at the start of the season, you had Marlon Mack as well, and it was maybe going to take a while. But after the Mack injury, I especially thought, Taylor's going to get all these carries, especially after how he'd shown in college. But he seems to be trying to spread the load a bit, maybe sensibly, because you don't want to burn him out in his first year, but give him the ball. He's much better than the other two. Jordan Wilkins, 1.7 yards a carry. Nyheim Hines, 2.7 yards a carry, and that included a 12-yard carry. So you get 12 yards on one carry, and the other 8 went for 12. And Jonathan Taylor going for 4 yards a carry. But Chicago Bears, I think it was you, Mikey, that said that you really like Nick Foles, I think, as a person as well, as opposed to just a player, and you're looking forward to him starting instead of Mitchell Trubisky. So I'll leave the floor to you.
Well, I remember it so well watching the Eagles win the Super Bowl. I was in a bar in Brisbane at the time, and was a lot of Patriots fans sitting in this bar, and I don't know if anybody really likes the Patriots, even Patriots fans. I don't even think Bill Belichick likes the Patriots when you see how miserable he
No.
is. But when you've seen everything that happened with the Eagles that season, and Nick Foles coming in, being a bit of a journeyman before that, and winning the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl MVP, you can't not like the guy, you know? So I was disappointed to see him kind of get thrown to the wayside in Jacksonville, and now he's finally landed on the Bears team. But a poor show. There's no getting around it, apart from the final 30 seconds of the game where he played like Patrick Mahomes. But it's hard to, if I was a Bears fan, which thank the Lord above that I'm not, if I was a Bears fan, I would really be unsure about this whole quarterback situation. How long does it take Nick Foles to have a few bad games before they bring Trubisky in, or are they sticking to their guns with Foles? These are decisions that you don't want as a head coach, and Matt Nagy's, it looks like he's already struggling a wee bit with what he actually wants with this offense.
Yeah, just going. Oh, sorry, guy. Just going on that touchdown drive at the end, where you're talking about Nick Foles looking like Patrick Mahomes. Okay, they moved down in about 2 minutes, and it was Foles to Robinson, Foles to Graham, to Robinson, to Mooney, to Robinson, to Graham, to Robinson, to Robinson. So I think he has a preferred target in that.
That's what I was just going to say, is that Allen Robinson seems to be the bright spark in that opposition in that offense. They just need to try and just give him the ball.
Yeah, I play in our 2 leagues, and then I play in a 3rd league with some English guys. And, yeah, I know. And I was playing my friend Ahan this week, and I was losing comfortably. And in the end, I only beat him by like 1.2 points. And I solely put it down to that last drive from the Bears, because I've got Allen Robinson. I think that was what probably gave me about 12 points on receptions, yards, and touchdown alone. So shout out to Ahan, because I know he's going to be listening to this podcast. I won, you lost.
Talking about Robinson helping people win as well, just talking about our PHFL league, we had our first 200-point score this week with my much better half, Claire, getting 216 points, and Alan Robinson was on her team. I can also point out that she also had Julio Jones, who I'm sure we'll talk about later on, who only had 7.2 points, and she still scored 216 points. So if Jones did anything closer to what he would have done, then it'd have been even more.
Well played, Claire.
Yes. And believe it or not, there is no collusion, though you like suggesting there is, Mikey.
I just call collusion on everyone and anyone. I just like saying the word.
I think there's not much to say in the way of excitement out of this game. I'm sure Mikey will agree with me on this point, that the Colts have the best kicker in the league. And Rodrigo Blankenship.
That's a fantastic name.
Yeah,
I'll keep this short.
I've got, sorry, just before you say this, Mikey, I've got down the 2 best names ever for a kicker and a punter for the Colts. The Colts have Rodrigo Blankenship as their kicker, and their punter is called Rigoberto Sanchez.
I mean, it's good names.
Yeah, during lockdown, I was playing Madden a lot, and I was doing my own career franchise, trying to have Michael McCallum at the Packers back to Titletown. And
did that work well?
Yeah, it did okay. Yeah. Me and Devontae Adams had a decent partnership, but long story short, you do every year you play. There's drafts, but it's obviously just made up computer players. And I had a kicker on my team called Rodrigo Blankenship, and I just thought it was the funniest name ever. And I spoke to Kai about it, and I thought he was made up, especially with that name. But the first year that you do the draft, you get people like Joe Burrow and Tua and stuff in. He must have came through in that draft. And when I seen that he was drafted from Georgia I didn't even know he was at Georgia last season in college, to the Colts, I think that was the most I've been, the happiest I've been this year, knowing that he's a real player. So, and I think he was 100% in college, and I think he's 100%
200 for 200. 200 for 200 on extra points in college, and I think he's I don't think he's missed one actually yet this season.
Yeah, so yeah,
he's also the dorkiest looking guy.
I was going to say he's the boy with specs as well.
Glasses,
big, those big kind of Edgar David's football sports specs across his face.
Oh, no, that's a throwback, Mikey. Some of the younger listeners won't know who Edgar David is.
Yeah, so my Indianapolis Colts Rodrigo Blankenship jersey is in the mail. I will be buying one soon. I'm all in on Rodrigo Blankenship.
Well, if my Super Bowl pick's right, then he might be playing in the Super Bowl. You never know.
Oh, would love that.
Super
Would
Bowl
love that.
MVP.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's move on from Mr. Blankenship's team and move on to our Sunday night football matchup. Kai's getting excited already.
Yes.
Philadelphia Eagles at San Francisco, 25 points to 20. Before Kai talks about his wonderful Eagles, let's talk about the 49ers. I've just said that Mullins and Bethard both like Kittle, as Kittle had 15 receptions from 15 targets, 183 yards and a touchdown. And all of Mikey's Nick Mullins' love was kind of lost when they brought CJ Bethard in.
Just before we even get to that, may I just say that when we do our predictions, I will stand by the Green Bay Packers through anything. I will pick them no matter who we are up against. I had the 49ers this week. Adam, you had the 49ers this week against the Eagles. Kai, who did you have?
Now we discussed this last week. I also took the 49ers.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking.
I've learned my lesson.
Yeah, but to speak Nick Mullins' poor game. It's I'm just trying to get up his stats here. So he was 18 of 26, but he threw 2 picks. CJ Beathard just didn't look good at all either. No touchdowns, 138 yards. I was surprised to see them bench Nick Mullins, to be fair. Usually when you've got a second string quarterback in, you're probably going to ride them to the end of the game at least. But CJ Beathard came in, just an all-round poor performance besides probably George Kittle from the 49ers. I think that the injuries are really starting to show for them.
Yeah, McKinnon did not bad for them as well with the 54 yards on the ground and a touchdown and 7 catches for 43 yards. But I think they're really looking for Mostert and Coleman to come back to kind of get a bit of variety in that running back room because Jeff Wilson, 3 attempts, 6 yards. Really, they're really a run-first team, that San Francisco 49ers, and the fact that they've lost 2 of their preferred running backs is really showing, I think. But I think let's not talk about the 49ers too much more. Let's let Kai bask in the glory. You have 12 seconds. No. On you go, Kai. Talk about your fantastic Eagles.
Finally.
You've got 12 seconds because we need to talk about the Packers a lot in this podcast.
Just obviously finally off the board. It's taken 4 weeks.
What do you mean just finally off the board? You already had a tie. That counts.
Yeah, I was going to say, including the stupid tie that we came across. No, I have to say, I did not expect this at all, as you probably know in the prediction. I thought even with the 49ers kind of losing, still having a few out to injury and having Nick Mullins and obviously CJ Beathard, that I didn't even know who he was going into this week. I thought the 49ers would still win, but all credit to the wonderful Eagles. I thought they played very well on both sides of the ball. Carson Wentz wasn't quite back to good Carson Wentz, but he was certainly much improved from weeks before. I think when you have Deshaun Jackson out, Alshon Jeffrey out, Arcega Whiteside out, Jalen Reagor out, you're really down to the bare bones of your roster. But Greg Ward stepped up. He didn't have many yards, but again, he filled a good role. Gave Wentz someone to throw the ball to. Miles Sanders again pretty quiet on the ground, but threat on all cylinders. The one person I have to give credit to in this Eagles team for this week is Singleton, who was called off the practice squad coming into this week, and in a clutch point of the game where the 49ers were looking to try and score a touchdown, he got a pick 6, and he's a big guy, and he ran 40 odd yards to run the ball in, and it looked like that's what ended up icing the game. Obviously they only won 25-20, but it looked like that was the big turning point of the game. I have to say, as much as the Eagles won, and I was delighted that they won, I still don't think they looked that that promising. To be honest, I think they still looked quite a bit short of a good team. I know that pains me to say that, but I think there's still massive improvements to be made. And I think part of this win was to do with the fact that the 49ers didn't play that well.
Are the Eagles the best team in this division?
Though they're not that great? They now lead the division with a 1-2-1 record. But I don't really know.
Is this the worst division in football at the moment?
This is the least exciting division, but I would still say.
I think that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah, is that nobody is that good. I think the Cowboys will come through. The Cowboys will win this division. I think they've been unfortunate at times so far through 4 weeks. I don't think their 1-3 record really corresponds to how they've played. But if the Eagles can get a few back from injury and they can build off the win this week, I think that there's always a chance. I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl again, but
that was a long 12 seconds, Kai.
Well, I think what we're going to have to do is I'll create a little sound drop for it'll just be entitled Kai's Eagles Monologue of the Week. And it'll have background music for exactly 60 seconds, and he gets exactly a minute to talk about the stuff each week, and then it'll just have a big buzzer.
Just to go back on the 49ers side of the ball, when Kai was talking there, I was thinking if they can slug their way through the next 3, 4, 5 weeks until some players come back from injury and maybe come out of it with a respectable record, and then a fully fit roster, besides obviously the people that are out for the season, will they be in playoff or Super Bowl contention again? I've just looked at their schedule. They've got Miami this week coming, but then they play the Rams, Patriots, Seahawks, Packers, Saints. Then they've got the bye week. Then they play the Rams again, Buffalo, Washington, Dallas, Arizona, Seattle. That is a very, very hard schedule.
Wouldn't describe it
Here
as
is
easy.
my prediction of the week, but it also counts for the season.
Get a sound drop in here.
Sound drop.
The San Francisco 49ers will not make the playoffs.
There you go. That's your sound drop for that.
I think with their injuries, they will. That's a very far-fetched claim, but just looking at that schedule, it's tough. They're going to lose to Green Bay, obviously. They play Seattle twice, Rams twice, and the Cardinals, I believe. Who else is in their division?
Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks.
Yeah, they've already played the Cardinals, so that's a tough division. If the Cardinals can turn it round, and obviously the Rams and the Seahawks are looking good just now. So I don't know. I think they could struggle without all their big players.
The only positive, I suppose, for them is they obviously play the NFC East. So there's at least another couple of wins there, since they've already got the Giants. They should have won this game, but they'll hopefully beat the Redskins and maybe not the Cowboys, but
the Washington.
Sorry, I keep saying that. I apologise. The Washington
That's
football
back-to-back weeks, Adam.
I think I should try and do it every week. That'd be a...
Yeah.
Well, I just do a wee... every time I say it. But yes, I think the Washington... Madden struggles with it as well because they just have football teams, so it ends up like Falcons against football team. And you're like, why, are Falcons no a football team? Maybe not, the way they're playing. But
well, that's true.
But so I think, Kai, well done to your Eagles in the first win. We'll see what they do next week. We'll move on to Monday Night Football that wasn't meant to be Monday Night Football because the New England Patriots travelled to the Kansas City Chiefs for Monday night, even though it was meant to be played on Sunday, but Cam Newton had tested positive for the current disease that's going about in the global pandemic. So they then tested all of New England's team, and they all were negative, so then they travelled on actually the Monday morning to Kansas City to play this game. And no surprises there, I suppose, that New England without Cam didn't win.
Yeah.
I have actually noted here, though, that New England could have won. The number of times that they had what could have been an interception counted at least a couple that they could have had, but Kansas City ended up winning 26-10.
Yeah, I've just got down that Hoyer is a bit boring and rubbish in comparison to Cam Newton. I think when you go from having Cam Newton 1 week to someone like him, you're obviously not expecting a straight swap, but I think they're almost at polar opposite ends of the quarterback spectrum. Jarrett Stidham looked a bit more exciting. He seems more adventurous with what he was willing to do, but I suppose they were trailing at that point when he came into the game, so he's kind of got to be a bit more adventurous. I think what they miss most about Cam Newton is the dual threat. When he gets the ball, you never really know what he's going to do because he's got the ability to run. But yeah, I would say it was made easy for the Chiefs by the Patriots. As much as the Chiefs didn't score a touchdown in the first half and then went on a ridiculous run in the second half. I think this was always, from the word go, I think this was always leaning towards the Chiefs.
Yeah, I stayed up to watch the first half, and I think it was Hoyer that was in in the first half. So Chiefs were up 6-3 and time was running down at halftime, and Hoyer made a mistake so that they couldn't kick a field goal. They were in field goal range.
He took a
made
sack,
a mistake, so time ran out. I will only say this with a Bill Belichick team because I know that the Chiefs outscored the Patriots 20-7 in the second half, and I know it's only a 3-point difference, but if the Patriots without Cam Newton go into halftime 6-all, that could have been a completely different second half.
Yep.
I think that missed field goal was a huge turning point in the game for the Chiefs. I think even if Hoyer had taken them into field goal range and got the field goal, maybe had a bit of more confidence rather than taking that sack in the second half, could have played a bit better before he got benched. So yeah, it was a huge moment in that match that I think just swayed it in Chiefs' favour.
Yep, I agree with you there. Looking in the Chiefs side of the ball, that's not what I tried to say. On the New England Patriots side of the ball, obviously Harris coming back off IR, had a 100-yard rushing game. I don't know how much of that is to do with the fact there was no Cam, and obviously Hoyer and Stidham aren't really going to be rushing too much. I felt that was impressive. Obviously, though, Sonny Michel again wasn't active for the game. There's so many running backs in that backfield, you don't know who's going to do what. But the Kansas City side, I feel Kansas City, they were off. They weren't at their best.
Yeah,
I feel as if they're maybe
inspiring.
a bit of a hangover after the Ravens game. Maybe they were concentrating on that game too much and didn't really concentrate on this one. But they did what they had to do, and they won. I think it was made easier with the fact Cam wasn't there.
Yeah,
championship teams are made from winning ugly.
Yeah.
I think that's what we said last week about the Patriots from a fantasy perspective. If you could just pick the New England Patriots running back every week, there is always going to be one that will break out. Harris obviously coming in this week and having a big day. Who knows who it will be next week? Obviously, if Cam is Cam back,
we don't know at this point.
There's discussion about that over what the COVID protocol is, whether or not he's allowed back, because obviously he's asymptomatic, so it's not like he has to wait until his symptoms are finished because they were never there to begin with.
So it'll obviously, I think it will depend massively on whether Cam's back or not. But yeah, I think it was never really a very exciting game. I think you kind of maybe expected a wee bit more from it, considering the two teams in it. But yeah, the Chiefs get the win, and like Mikey says, they win ugly.
I think we can move on from that game then to go to the actual Monday Night Football that was meant to be played that night, and the fantastic Green Bay Packers, I like to describe them as, winning at Lambeau against the Atlanta Falcons, 30 points to 16. Aaron Rodgers, I feel, 27 passes from 33 attempts, 4 touchdowns. He was on fire. I'd say he looks as if he's back with a vengeance in this offense.
This is, I think we spoke about it briefly in the podcast last week about how I just feel that Rodgers is a very grumpy player on the field, but you just seen him all game. I watched the full game. He just looks like he's having fun. He really looks like he's enjoying himself in this Packers offense. second year under this system with this coach. I just think that sky's the limit for the Packers at the moment. I think on the defensive side of the ball, Zadarius Smith probably had his best game of the season after a Pro Bowl season last season. We're missing Kenny Clark at the moment, so we have struggled. Probably the biggest talking point is the fact that Jair Alexander held Calvin Ridley to 0 receptions for 0 yards. That was just
Don't
huge.
mention it, Mikey, please. I still have
Again,
flashbacks.
Probably for the fourth time in this podcast, Adam had him in fantasy against me, and I was worried that he was going to go off because I thought that the Packers might be winning and they were going to throw a lot. I mean, how many targets did he have in
Ridley
general?
had 5 targets.
Yeah, 5 targets. I think he had a red zone target as well.
He dropped it in the end zone.
Could have went a completely different way, but this was just a very professional performance from the Packers. They were running a lot of 3 running back sets.
I noted that as well. Yeah.
It looked like they were basically playing Aaron Jones as a wide receiver at times. He was literally lining up in the wide receiver position or in the slot. You think that with an old man like Aaron Rodgers, that it's just going to be one of those offenses that will score points but doesn't look flashy or anything. This was just, I think they just look very versatile on offense. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens this season.
Top 3 receivers for Green Bay were Jamal Williams with 8, Tonyan with 6, Aaron Jones with 5. Oh, and there's a wide receiver finally with Valdez-Scantling with 4 catches. So he was the fourth most receptions was by the wide receiver.
I'll let Kai speak about Robert Tonyan, but Jamal Williams, I don't know about you, Adam, but I think again an underrated player for the Packers. Not in the same terms as Latavius Murray, but he's almost like that backup running back who will get the job done whenever needed. Not in terms of fantasy, just in terms of being a good NFL running back. I really like our backfield at the moment.
Yep, it's a really good kind of 1-2 punch with those, and then you've got the 3 punch of Dillon, and then the 4 punch of this boy Irvin as well. That's coming. I'm really happy with everything we've got back there.
And then don't forget about the 5 punch with Aaron Rodgers, who had 1 attempt for 5 yards.
Oh yeah, I mean that's
this guy can run.
Exactly.
Right, just because there's 2 of you doesn't mean you can double the amount of time.
We get 24 seconds.
God.
Kai, on you go. Talk about Tonyan.
Tea, drank it, taking the car for a wash and that.
We'll let you talk about Tonyan then, Kai.
The only point I have down really on the Packers side of the ball here is Devontae Adams, who the Packers have Robert Tonyan. I don't think anyone coming into this week would have said out of the 4 touchdowns they scored, if you'd said 3 of them would have been scored by one player, you would have put money on it being Aaron Jones.
Yep.
Not Robert Tonyan.
No, exactly.
I don't really know what else you're meant. I think to the extent that Sleeper, I now have him as I think he's in the top 5 wide receivers now after this week, based on points scored, fantasy points scored. Even though he's a tight end.
Aye, there's maybe a wee glitch going on in the system there.
I don't think that's meant to happen. But yeah, I mean, you guys have spoken with the Packers enough. I think, obviously, Calvin Ridley was held to 0 points. Julio Jones was non-existent, essentially. Todd Gurley seemed to be doing most of the work, and even at that, it was the 2 touchdowns mask the fact that he only rushed for 57 yards. So.
Yeah, I was going to say it's good he's got the touchdowns. But...
Yeah,
just looking at my notes from last week, I just wrote the emergence of Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis, and Jay Sternberger. The offense looks like they'll take a big step up, and I guess obviously Tonyan must be a fan of the show as well because him and OBJ have both stepped up this week. So Thanks for listening to the show, guys. We appreciate your support.
The only other point I've got here is the 0-4 Falcons look beat. They, as much as it was them that threw away their wins through the first 3 weeks, they didn't look inspiring at all.
Again, the less said about Dan Quinn, the better for me. I just get angry when I think about it.
Yeah. Well, as Kai said, I'm sure we've talked about the Packers enough there. The one game that was meant to be played this week was obviously Titans and Steelers. That was delayed because of COVID, and that's now getting played week 7. They've moved the Steelers-Ravens game to week 8, I think, to fit that in, and they had their bye this week. I'm glad to see that the last couple of days there's been no positive cases at Tennessee, and it looks like everything's getting roughly back to normal.
Finally.
Going back to Green Bay slightly, they've told them, I'm sure, at Lambeau that they're not allowed fans in anymore because there's quite a big outbreak happening in Wisconsin at the moment. But there's no players, I don't think, at Green Bay that have been confirmed with it yet.
No.
But they've said that the fans aren't to go in. And that's our week 4 review. A couple of wee things to do before we finish. I have a little game to play, which should only take a couple of minutes. And then we'll have a look at our predictions from last week and see where our table is. And Mikey's in charge, or is it Kai? I don't know who's. One of you have taken charge of that.
Mikey.
Mikey's got the scoreboards and
I'll
tell
take
us.
charge of winning. Mikey can take charge of keeping note.
Aye, well, I
Talk
don't.
the talk, guys.
I don't think I've won it, to be honest. Not so far, anyway. So quickly, a little game. There are 4 teams who are currently 0-4 in the NFL. And I'm going to ask the two of you, when do you think they're going to win their first game? Okay, so I'll talk you through each team and their schedule. So the first one is a team that Mikey really likes as head coach, the Atlanta Falcons. They're obviously 0-4, having lost to the Seahawks, the Cowboys, the Bears, and the Packers. When are they going to win their first game? So this coming week, they are at home to the Panthers. Do you think they win that game?
No.
No. Right. Then they're at the Vikings in week 6. Do you think they win that game?
No.
Nah, I don't think so.
No. Week 7, they're at home to Detroit.
Yes.
Maybe.
I need a yes or no answer here, Mikey.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're going, they'll go 0-6, and then they'll get their first win.
Before they get a win.
They get their first win at Detroit. So that's the two of you. We'll be able to note that down. Both of you think Detroit is the first win. The next team is the Houston Texans. So they lost to Kansas City, they lost to Baltimore Ravens, they lost to the Steelers, they lost to the Vikings. This week they're at home to Jacksonville. Did they win that?
Yes.
Yep. So that's a quicker game.
They're revived.
Yeah.
Yep.
Only for one game though, because then after that they play the Titans and the Packers, which is an automatic loss against the Packers. So again, I think they'll beat the Jags.
Yeah. So both of you're both agreeing so far. This is good. To be honest, I'm going to give you the answer. I agree with you so far as well. Yeah. Lions is going to be first win for the Falcons, and then the week 5 for the Texans and the Jags. Yeah. So apologies, Matthew. Again, we're going to be talking about the 2 New York teams, since they're both 1-4.
Which one does he support?
I'm not quite sure at the moment. He just said he didn't like us slagging off New York teams in total.
Right.
So,
okay.
I'll need to find out exactly. I'm sure he'll message us when he listens to the second one. If he doesn't listen to it, he's disowned. So, the Giants, we'll start with them. They lost to the Steelers, lost to the Bears, lost to the 49ers, lost to the Rams. They're at Dallas this week. Did they get a win there?
No.
Nope.
Then they're at home to the Washington football team.
What do you think, Kai?
I'll give you my answer. No, they don't win this game.
I was going to say no as well.
I'm saying yes.
Right, so first difference of opinion. So that's Washington. Week 7, they're at the Eagles.
Lose.
No chance they're winning that.
I think they win that game.
Oh, screw you.
Okay, week 8. Week 8, they're at home to Tampa Bay.
No,
right? Week 9.
Mikey's got them 0-16.
week 9, they're at the Washington football team.
No.
Week 10, they're at home to the Eagles.
Nope.
Week 11, they're on a bye. Do they get that win? No.
That's a win for them because they don't lose.
Week 12, they're at the Cincinnati Bengals.
No.
Nope. Week 13, they're at the Seattle Seahawks.
Loss.
Week 14, they're at home to the Cardinals.
I'll just save you the time. I'm looking at the schedule here. I think there's a very good chance they go 0-16.
I'm going to cut that out. There we go.
They're obviously gonna win a game potentially against Washington in one of the games. But just looking at that schedule, considering that they've got no Saquon, Daniel Jones is playing poorly, offense is ridiculously bad at the moment. D isn't much better. They're going to struggle a lot. I can't see where they buy a win here.
So Kai says that week 6 at home to Washington, and I think week
And
7
I say
away
it's
to the
some
Eagles.
point past that. I just don't know when.
You have said 0-16. We have evidence of it here. You went Giants 0-16.
Set in stone now.
Yep. And the last team who are currently winless, the New York Jets.
Who I think less of than the Giants. By the way,
so that's going to
a
say something. They lost to Buffalo, lost to the 49ers, lost to the Colts, and then lost to the Broncos in the really boring / exciting Thursday night football. They're at home to the Cardinals this week.
No.
Then they're at LA.
No.
Sorry, LA Chargers. I need to specify there.
No? Chargers?
No. Then they're at home to Buffalo.
No.
Then they're away to the Chiefs.
No.
Then they're at home to the Patriots.
No.
Then they're at Miami.
Nope.
Yes.
No. So Kai goes week 10 at Miami. Then week 11 they're on a bye, and then they're at home to Miami in week 12.
They'll win that one. I think they'll win at home to the Dolphins, just not away.
I'm saying no. I like the Dolphins. I think Tua might be in by then. Week 13 they're at home to the Raiders, and that's where I think the Jets will get their win. At home
And
to
then
the Las Vegas Raiders.
and then just at the end they've got Seahawks, Rams, Browns, and Patriots. So I think that the two New York teams, I am sorry, Adam's brother, will be 1-32 for the season.
That's very
What was it we
impressive.
asked last week? If the 49ers would come away from this season with more wins at MetLife than any of
them.
teams?
Well, clearly I think yes.
It appears yes. But I think week 13, just to clarify, at home to the Las Vegas Raiders is when the Jets will get their first win. I apologise, New York football fans.
Yeah, I've got a friend who's also a Jets fan. I feel bad for him at the moment.
Well, maybe
at least you're not a Giants fan.
That's very true. With that little game finished, if we can move on to our predictions after our 2-minute warning. I need to find a whistle. Can I go? Will I find a whistle in my soundboard? I don't think I have it. I have crickets.
That's our. We can change that, but that can be our current.
Is that our current one? Right. That's our 2 minute. That's a really poor, like a ref struggling to blow the whistle. We're on to predictions, Mikey. So if you tell us, work our way through the games, who each person predicted to win, and who was right, who was wrong, and give us our scores.
Yep. So if you want to just give the names of the games, and I'll say who each person predicted.
Yes. That is no problem.
We'll just run through them
at all. So we started off with Thursday night football with Denver at New York Jets.
I think myself and Adam were wrong in that one. Kai was the only one that he had the Jets.
No, I didn't.
He had the
Broncos. Sorry, the Broncos, and we had the Jets. Apologies.
Yeah. Maybe we were being too kind, seeing as now we've predicted the Jets to win so late into the season for the first game.
Yeah, for sure.
Baltimore at Washington.
Yeah, that was a clean sweep for all of us.
Yes. No one was crazy to pick the underdog in that game. I'm sure no one picked underdogs in any of the future games either. The Chargers at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay won that one. Yeah,
I think we all had Tampa Bay in that one.
Yep. Hey, we're good so far. Well, Kai's better than us, but Seattle at Miami.
Myself and Kai both had Seattle. Yeah, this is the one we were talking about earlier. Adam took the Dolphins.
The reason for this, I'll quickly clarify. Okay, Seattle were travelling across the country. You know, they might be tired. That was my only reason for it, really. It's the sort of game Miami might be up for. Maybe Seattle were looking for future weeks for tougher matches. I don't know. Anyway, I was wrong, so it doesn't matter. Minnesota at Houston.
This was an interesting one. I believe both of you took Houston. Both of you took Minnesota and I took Houston. I just thought at home, I didn't know that they were planning on firing a head coach. I'd like to have that one back, but you two were right on that one.
New Orleans Saints at the Detroit Lions.
This is a bit of an interesting one. I had the Saints, and I think you both had the Lions. I don't know if you thought maybe without Michael Thomas it would have been a bit of a struggle, but Saints came through in that one.
Yeah, without Thomas, without Cook, I thought, the Saints will struggle. And it started well with Detroit going up 14-0. But if I knew now that when Detroit lead, they throw it away.
If you'd known that stat, you would have backed it. Yeah, at least you know for future.
Exactly. Never back the Lions. Cleveland at Dallas. Cleveland won that game, obviously.
Yep, I think we all had the Cowboys. You had the Browns, Adam.
Did I?
Yes, you
surprises
did.
me.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. I'm only kidding you. We all had the Cowboys in that one.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll take it, but I don't think I did.
No, we all had the Cowboys.
Jacksonville Jaguars at the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yep, I think
Bengals
we
won
all
that.
had Cincinnati, I believe. Yep, we all had Cincinnati.
Yep. The Arizona Cardinals at the Carolina Panthers. Carolina won that.
Adam, you had Carolina, and Kai, you had. You both had Carolina. I had the Cardinals because I've got Kyler and Kenyon Drake in my fantasy team, but I'll know that for future.
Exactly. New York Giants at the Rams. Surely we all said Rams.
Clean sweep.
Yeah. Buffalo Bills at the Raiders. Yes, it is. Buffalo won that.
Again, clean sweep. Yep.
Good. The Colts at the Bears. Indianapolis at Chicago.
Myself and Adam had the Bears. I guess we thought Foles Magic would have came through, but Kai was right on that one.
You see, even as someone who fancied Indianapolis to get to the Super Bowl, possibly, that was my outlandish pick last week. I thought Foles Magic might have worked, but it didn't. I think we've already talked about a prediction for this one, but Philadelphia at San Francisco.
Yep, so I think we all said 49ers, yep.
Boo, Kai.
Clean sweep of 0.
The Patriots at the Chiefs. I hope we all said Chiefs.
We all said Chiefs, clean sweep.
And the Falcons at the Packers. I'm hoping we all said Packers.
Clean sweep again.
Indeed. So can you give us an update on the scores for this week and then the totals? Weekly
score, Kai won this week with 12 out of 15. Obviously, one game was postponed, so 12 out of 15.
Well played.
Myself, I got 9 out of 15. And Adam, one behind with 8 out of 15.
I mean, that's still above 50%.
Yep, so obviously we started only on weeks 3 and 4, so we missed the first 2 weeks of the season. So current totals, Kai's on 21 out of 31. I'm on 18 out of 31. And Adam on 15 out of 31. And remember, this is for £100,000, so you might want to buck up your ideas.
You two might want to.
I was going to say, I don't have £100,000, so I'll need to get.
We have sponsors. Nick Mullins is.
Nick Mullins has put his salary in.
Very, very true. Well, now that we know that Kai's the best at predicting so far, that's somewhere that we can leave. I suppose he's good at something because we picked the good football team to support Mikey, and Kai can pick predictions.
Go Pack, go.
What we'll do is we'll pop our predictions up in social media for the coming week when we've made them, so that everyone knows roughly what the predictions are, and then we'll talk about it at the end of the next podcast as well. So when we've all decided, I can post them up on
just
on
some breaking news out of New England from this app that I'm not telling you about. Patriots star cornerback and defensive player of the year last season, Stephon Gilmore, has tested positive for coronavirus. The team isn't expected to practice today, so that could have implications for their game against, I want to say, the Raiders next week.
That could have implications as well.
No, they aren't playing. They're playing at home to the Denver Broncos, so the fact that they're playing in New England as well could be that game could be postponed. You never know, especially with Cam and now Stephon testing positive.
That could influence and be important as well for the Chiefs, because I know obviously Gilmore will have tested negative before that game, but if he's tested positive now, you would assume that he would have had it.
Yep. And they're possibly going to test all the Chiefs players as well. Something to look into.
You wouldn't have caught it. You wouldn't have thought since returning from that game. You'd have thought it'd have been from the initial outbreak. So yeah.
So some interesting news there to end the show.
Yes, exactly. Breaking news, and we'll see if I can get this up early enough that it still sounds like breaking news. Otherwise, it'll be old news by then. But thank you very much, Kai, and thank you very much, Mikey, for joining me again today.
Yes, thank you.
Pleasure as always. Yes, thank you for everyone that listened last week.
It's a little bit shorter this week, not as short as I think we wanted to be, but it's a little bit shorter. We're getting there. We'll start talking less.
I think we're sub 2 hours.
Aye, exactly. So we'll get there.
Baby steps, as we said.
Exactly. But I say thank you very much for listening again, and we'll talk to the two of you next week, and everyone can listen into our rubbish that we decide to chat next week. Okay?
Thank you.
As Mikey said last week, go Pack, go.
Fly Eagles fly.